Welcome. I'm Deana Whitney, and this is JordanCon 2021 with the workshops track. And we are joined today all the way from Australia by Linda Taglieri, who is our wonderful in-resident expert about so many things, as demonstrated on her wonderful website, the 13th Depository, where she has the go-to reference for all the wonderful costumes and historic inspirations of Jordan's Wheel of Time series. Linda, welcome. Introduce
Hi,
yourself a little
Deana.
more.
Thanks very much for the intro. I'm really happy to be here today.
Yes, as am I. Oh, yeah, I forgot to introduce myself a little. Deana Whitney, the director of the workshops track for JordanCon, and trying to have everything together in this weird virtual world. But we'll have a blend of virtual content and in-person content this year. So Linda brought you on today because Jordan has a lot of references to clothes. But one thing that winds up causing questions to arise is his descriptions of divided skirts and how that directs, especially when he has the girls splitting their regular skirts into the divided skirts. And that's been a topic of discussion you and I have had privately, but I thought we would share and discuss a little bit more about what happens and some of the realities of that in true costuming. So,
Yeah, I mean, it really is contentious, and you really like. And when you do that, you really learn what is and isn't comfortable. Area where that's a really big deal, I think.
yeah, I agree. Because I know I've made.
So I'm joined here today by Elaine. Yeah, no, that's all right, and she's demonstrating one of them.
All right. Yeah. Yes, your beautiful, wonderful dolls. Oh, I should have grabbed my doll, the one I got from the charity auction.
She's not in riding dress though.
True. Yeah. True. Just a normal skirt. So, I know split skirts, Victorian era and Edwardian era split skirts that are basically like the world's largest culotte pants or palazzo pants. But please talk a little bit more about how the Jordan or the medieval divided skirts are so different than the standard split skirts that people are more familiar with.
Yes, I mean, Victoria riding dress, you're right. It is completely divided into like culottes. But Jordan's, the divided skirts, they still are a skirt in the sense that they're only sort of sewn up about halfway up the thigh, and then they're open. So the crotch is open. And I know this for a fact because Harriet said to me when I had actually Egwene with me, and she said, like, is the crotch open? And I said yes, and she's good because that's how they are. So I was I worked out that that's how they were, and then I thought it's not super comfortable unless you've got a lot of bulk. If you're in a saddle for hours on end on a trek, it certainly makes getting off the horse and going to the toilet easier behind a tree or a bush. Considerable, mildly, unless you have your skirts just so. And really, they rely on the bulk, as you talk about you said about the Victorian riding dresses being very bulky. That's really for comfort of the rider. And also, if you have a divided petticoat under your riding dress, you've got all those extra layers. And in this period, they also had the shift as well, which usually went to about the mid-thigh at least. That too offers a bit of additional protection. So if you get all those layers lined up covering yourself, you won't chafe. I hope.
Yeah, chafing very important. So would you say that even Fail, who was known to have all of her dresses split to begin with, that she had, because I always imagined that her dresses were actually more like two pieces, because I think there was one chapter when Piran talked about her dresses.
I mean, she's worn vests. She was the only one to ever wear a vest like, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Which may be his description of a top that buttoned down the front over her skirt. Did it have a bodice as well? I don't know. He didn't know. He wasn't really big on clothes. That's why he wore the same stuff as much as he could. But yes, what got me was the fact that when she walked, she always had the whisk. So they were definitely closed pants with the open crotch, I think, because yeah, that's the thing about the riding dresses. They weren't just simply split up the back. They actually definitely were like, at least partially like pants, in that you could hear the legs rub against each other when you walk. When they walked.
Well, I know when I wear my divided skirts, the split pants, I hear a whisk of just the fabric running together, and it doesn't matter if it's in the corduroy or if it's the linen one. There's definitely a different sound to it than standard. That it's kind of thrilling to hear that little whisk, even if Aiel's not always my favorite character.
But yeah, I mean, it really puts the wearer into character when, I mean, that is the sound that it made, which is really good. I mean, the whisk, that's so typical of silk rubbing against each other, which they mostly did wear. I mean, some silks can be quite hard wearing, so that's cool. But I would have, I guess, being Australian, and we're great wool growers here, I certainly would be in wool as much as possible.
Well, you know, and all the sheep herders, you know, the Two Rivers was full of sheep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the Browns always usually wore wool, which is very sensible of them, in my opinion. So, and you know, if it gets hot, not many wore linen, but that would be the best thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, all the natural fabrics breathe so much differently and better than so many modern fabrics. I mean, I really hope that, like, the Wheel of Time show brings in the diversity of costumes and the natural fibers. I mean, I'm so looking forward to the costumes so that we can have a full conversation about that here in a few months.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be great. Yeah. So, I mean, all these, like 90s wearing linen petticoat, divided petticoats under hers, because it also, the petticoats were important, not just for added warmth, but also to stop your dress from the lining from getting the oil from your skin on them, so you didn't have to wash them quite as often.
Right.
You know, so. And they just provided that extra bolt can make everything sit right, either on the horse or off it.
Yes. Yes, I had to have that perfect shape and everything.
That's right.
Now, I believe you once said that the ratio for a divided skirt versus a skirt, what was that ratio again?
Okay, so I worked out that I'm just fiddling with these dolls. So Nynaeve is, her dress here is the skirt's twice her waist, like the actual width of fabric that I've used is twice the waist, which is not that unusual, but her dress is a bit lean, but she wasn't riding, she was mostly traveling. So, you know, but Egwene here has 2.5 times, and you see the difference immediately.
Yes.
It's she, you know, it's much bulkier. Probably 2.5 I found on the dolls was the sort of mangle into place, and it looks nice and full. So I think that was the perfect one.
Okay.
And
now,
that's what I'd use if I made a full one.
Yeah. Okay. Did you find a box pleat or an accordion pleat to be better accommodating for that?
Well, either would work. On the dolls, the accordion pleat is more practical to do, but just because otherwise you're getting fatter and fatter around the waist for them, because even 1/4 of an inch or whatever makes a difference on the dolls.
Right.
Because that's, you know, because they're quarter scale, so that scales up to on an actual person. So so you've got a bit more please. Yeah. On your own dress.
Okay. I'm sorry. Apparently, I'm having a few internet issues on my end,
Oh.
so I'm hoping this smooths
Okay.
out. Fingers
I
crossed.
see. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I had a thought and it just escaped.
Oh, okay.
You know how
I
that
was,
goes.
you know how Elaine divided the skirts for the party pretty much because she was the best one at sewing compared,
Right.
well, certainly compared to Nynaeve, because Nynaeve isn't a maker of things by any means.
No, great
So
herbalist.
this is Elaine's. Fabulous. Yes, but not a maker. So I've got a petticoat here. It's actually Elaine's, and I've turned it inside out so that you can sort of see that you take a skirt and you cut up the front and back, and then you've got the two halves, but not all the way, obviously, so that you stop sort of just below, a fair bit below where you'd put the crotch, if you like, and you sew up the bits you've cut about mid-thigh, and then I carefully edged around the this is the back, that is the front. So I've carefully hemmed down the cut material. So that's literally how I've made them. I did these by hand, of course, because they're so small and using a machine isn't any faster. So that's a demonstration of how it can be done.
Right.
So you can see the
Wide opening.
Down. Yes, that's right. And then you've got the seam up to mid-thigh, say. They're not difficult to make, they're quite simple, but you have to be careful on the hem around the top of the opening. That's the tricky bit I found. Certainly at this scale, on a human scale, not so bad, I don't think.
Right. Now, do you think the girls would have, if they had the extra material or stuff, basically taken a ribbon of material to help since
to bind? Oh, yes, that's another way. I mean, I just did it. I assume they're on the run pretty much, so they won't have access to that sort of stuff. So I wanted to see if you could do it just absolutely with only the dresses. And
okay.
But certainly at a full scale, yes, it's perfectly possible. But yes, a ribbon makes everything easier, absolutely. So yeah, when you're at home, use that.
Yeah, when you're home and you have access to everything, but when you're on the road and you're like, I just lost my needle.
That's bad, and I'm notorious needle dropper, so that would be me.
Yes. Yeah, I dropped one just the other day and my son found it and he was not happy with mommy.
Oh, we've had years of that. Here.
It's like, pat the cushions carefully. There's a possible lost needle here.
Yeah, and also in carpet, needles and carpets are a menace, as we know. Yeah. Right. So, these dresses, they do allow for astride riding, so you can go in your long trek, because really on a side saddle, that's not a super comfortable position for a long ride day after day after day, I don't think. I'm sure women got used to it, but it was never meant to be for that sort of riding. Astride is good. So the sort of paintings where you see the woman astride and her dress is draped all over the horse, and it looks sort of very dramatic, but if that horse gets hot, it's going to sweat all over her dress. And that's not good. So they did it in certainly medieval times. Everything was under the woman, partly to cushion her, but also it stopped the dress from getting horse sweat on it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, horse blankets for multiple reasons. You protect.
That's true, but mostly they don't put the horse blanket on the rump. And you see those paintings with the dress all draped over the horse's rump, and obviously that's not a great idea at all if you want to keep your clothes clean.
Right. Yeah, because with your point, I think I seen the side saddle depictions more like the ladies on the great hunt and these little hunts, not the great hunt
Yes,
as in,
yes, yes.
but like
That's right.
the fox hunt for just a couple of
Yes,
hours, not
yes, that's right.
days
Yeah,
and days and days.
that's right. And again, it looks very glamorous, and really that it's more a display thing as well as emphasizing that they're women. But these books are emphasizing that the women and the men are quite equal in what they do and what they can do. So that the side saddle thing is that he did not want to go there at all.
Yeah.
Astride. Yeah.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. Mm.
I know, because the first thing I'd be thinking is if they are in the side saddle, I'd be wincing for them. How uncomfortable.
It's been
And
so
also
long
too, they
since.
change horses, so
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, they travel by boat, by river,
All sorts of
by
stuff.
horses, every walk, every way.
Yeah. So you can't sort of have your side. What if it hasn't got the right saddle for you? Then what? Yeah. The other thing too, I guess, the reason why the crotches are open is they're not wearing underpants. That was quite usual up until, I don't know what, mid 17th century-ish. And then gradually the drawers or bloomers or whatever you want to call them started to be used. They came from France, I believe, the fashion for wearing underpants. So yeah. Your private parts, to be blunt. You did not need to actually have another special garment just for them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
You would know. That's the point.
a very good and very strong point.
Yeah. So I guess there is Egwene. I'll take her off so that you can sort of see the full bulkiness of her riding dress. This is what she was described as wearing when she left Valdara in the Great Hunt, actually. This was a dress that was supplied by the Shanaran royal family. So, and she's got like a linen divided skirt as well. So yeah, I realised I have to hold her up a fair bit so that you can see.
I thought
that was the first divided skirt that I made. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, see, I thought the Shanarans were described more as the empire waist of.
That's from Candle.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. They were quite, the Shanarans. Well, they had very, the men had very distinctive costume and hairstyle. The women were a bit more generic at that stage. They weren't quite as having a marked style as occurred in some of the nations later, like Korean, with which is very Baroque. So yeah, this was great silk to work with, and I was able to get the pleats and that sort of, and work out the width without too much trouble. And the other one, I guess, I wanted to show is this is the Elaine's riding dress, and it's the blue slashed with cream. So that's actually an Elizabethan era style, and Elaine, in fact, is a Queen Elizabeth analogue, very obviously, with all the drama and everything. This one, I was puzzled when Jordan sort of said that the women often had slashed riding dresses, because the trouble with that is that the outer layer is then weakened by the slashing, and and these dresses would not have worn well, in my opinion. Plus, sometimes the slash would be open and the underlayer would be rubbing, and so you're really getting a lot more wear out of it than say a practical like a closed silk like Egwene's or wool. But anyway, they look pretty, and that was the whole point of those.
Well, I mean, she was the daughter heiress.
That's right. She always had to be the glamour.
Yeah, she wasn't having
No,
known
I
for.
put jeweled buttons on hers. I did the whole full Elizabethan thing, and it was fun. And even like tiny little beads at the top of each slash.
Yeah.
Now,
so does her dress close at the back?
Yeah, I do. They usually closed up each other's clothes, as far as I could. Dresses having 3 rows of buttons, because I think it was 90, and Elaine's insisting, no, it's totally necessary, which it isn't.
I know. I remember reading that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading that scene going, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
Yeah. So no, the other 2 rows were for decoration, really. But but it did show, it did emphasize that they closed up each other's gowns, which was fairly typical for the era. Either you got your maid to do it, or someone else was there to help you dress.
Right. Yeah, because I know you haven't read the Lady Trent novels, but she's the Lady Adventurer, and she makes a point of saying that she commissions dresses for her adventures that she can dress herself in, that they fashion in the front so that she can, doesn't have to worry about the maidservant or anything else. And then later on in the series, they kind of skip over divided skirts and go straight to her wearing pants, which caused a bit of a scandal. So
yes, well, I mean, Vegeta does wear pants all the time, so she does not wear, and they all sort of remark on that. And of course Min, so those are the only 2 for quite a long while, and that normally would cause far more comment than they have in the books, but that's okay.
Another thing we can hope that the show depicts, the diversity of costuming and everything else, and men wearing the pants, and it kind of, as she goes on, the more they become more decorative and more, embroidery from basic to decorative. It'd be really nice.
Agreed. Yes, but all the clothes of the Two Rivers area people, they all, as they rose in status, got more costly, more decorated, far richer, and that showed their rise in status, which is absolutely accurate. That is what would have happened. As someone rose in status, you were expected to dress appropriately for your new station.
Right.
Yeah, and of course the biggest exponent of that was Matt Cawthon when he became Prince of the Ravens, and he's getting a hugely elaborate Japanese style outfit, and then
with a black hat,
with his Odin hat on top. Yes. A reverse cherry, you might say, on top of a cake. But it's that Jordan did that so well. I mean, sort of national variations is very true to the real world, and the changing clothes as your status rose is totally appropriate. And the guilds having slightly different traditional wear, as befits the fact that they're artisans and they usually need slightly different outfits because they've got to have protection in different areas, say, depending on what they're doing and all that. That was also really, really well done. I really liked that. Most of the fashions were very appropriate or practical. The riding dresses, I guess, is one of the ones that you sort of think, yes and no. So provided you've got a lot of layers between you and the saddle, you should be good. But the slash slashing too, I think, on outfits that are you're meant to be very active in,
Mhm.
is a bit odd. But to be honest, in Elizabethan times, the very rich did do exactly that. They were so extravagant at Elizabeth and Henry VIII's courts, that they were wearing clothes even when they were being very active, that you would think would not wear well at all.
Right. Well,
And,
also, whenever I think of slashing, I think of the Landsknecht and their
yes.
uber
Oh, yes.
slashings.
Oh, yes, that's very extreme. There's no hint that they're that extreme, but they certainly did, I think. Certainly just the cuts with the raw edges, which I found when I made my these slash dresses, that I was unable to bring myself to leave the edges raw. I'll say this outfit, I have actually edged them. I just did not want to see the fabric fray, but it would have, and that was part of the look. It's kind of like wearing distressed jeans of that, which not everyone likes, but plenty do. So, yeah.
I'm just thinking of a couple of experiments from historical things of ways of sealing it, like
Yes.
with wax and other things, basically
Fish glue
medieval
and
seam
stuff.
glue.
Yep. Yes, I could have done that too, but glue and I aren't the best of friends, so I actually did what works best for me and actually just edged the thing so that I didn't have to look at frayed edges. But yeah, maybe one day I'll bring myself to actually just leave it like it would have been left. I don't know, did I actually channel the edges so that they didn't fray? They might have.
Now there's a
Who
thought.
knows? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would be quite hilarious. Yeah.
Practical purposes for weaves.
Well, that's right, but the Yellow Arger refused to do that on the whole. They thought it was, not spiritual enough, or it's almost misusing the power for something when you do something quite mundane with it. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just individual choice, isn't it? Yeah. I have yet to do a woolen outfit because the girls all spent so much of their time in silk once they left the Two Rivers as they rose in status. That I haven't done one of the sort of someone who's been at the top, say like Kat Swain has been at the top for so long that she's quite happy to wear wool. She's been on plenty of treks, and yeah, so I actually have a doll that would pass quite well as Kat Swain. So that's a future project of mine, to actually dress her as in one of the scenes in the books. I haven't decided which one, but she'll be in wool.
But you're not going to self-insert yourself as a brown sister in divided skirts in the 13th Depository.
Oh, change the banner or the icon on the blog. Oh, yeah, no, probably not. Yeah. That's not to say maybe the blog couldn't have an update or two, I suppose, but I haven't done that yet. Too busy writing.
I understand. I'm trying to remember now if Viren was described as wearing divided skirts, because I know she was described as wearing
She
brown
certainly
wool.
rode, but they never made a thing of it. Yeah, she was always in brown wool. It's like they treated her as a typical brown in that you wore your clothes. You didn't worry about, like, there was no actual note of her clothes, just that, yeah, she's in brown wool, as per usual. Sometimes it was described as dark brown, and we know now that characters who wore darker clothing tended to be on the darker side of the Arjars. But yes, we're all smart after the event of the exposure of that. But yeah, they didn't really describe her clothing as anything of interest to remark about. So I'm sure she wore divided clothing, but yeah, it just wasn't a thing because it isn't with the Browns. Yeah, but yeah, they did just mention for Cat Swain, so that will be a project. Yeah, as always, I have more ideas than I have time to carry out.
Ugh. Yeah.
Knows that feeling. I just can't buy more fabric. There's nowhere to put it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, I guess we could sort of summarise up that these are the divided skirts. They're not trousers at all, because we know that Min and Bajita are remarked on for wearing trousers. They reach here, so there's that's mid thigh on 19. I'll just hold it up. And no further. They're open after that, and sort of the petticoat is aligned the same, and the shift will come down to about there, which covers your whole body so that your clothes are kept clean, and that too helps. So that covers any gaps, and so you don't chafe when you're riding astride. You can do that for hours.
Now, would you say the shift also has a bit of a flare cut or anything, or?
I think it would have. I mean, the shifts were never tight in any period, I don't think. So because they needed to allow a lot of movement. And many shifts were down to the knees, but obviously that won't work if on a riding dress. You would actually have to have a slightly shorter shift than that, to mid-thigh, I'd say, like basically where they're divided. And that kind of helps. If the skirt is bulky enough, show through, but or anything really, that bulk is essential. But I don't think you would need to have more than 3 times your waist.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a very sort of straight build, not super curvy, you would not even need 3 times probably. But if you've got quite, an hourglass figure, then you would need the bulk over the hips. But you could probably have it could be slightly gored, I think, rather than just using a straight tube. You could, have do cut your own flare.
Yeah, it had the triangle panels.
That the skirts would all that I think that's fine in this period. There's no hint of any of that not being allowed or being allowed. It's just your skirt cut to your taste really. And yeah, but you just need that bulk at the hips and down into the thighs. So the skirts, some of the skirts weren't super bulky because Egwene always remarks on the Aiel having bulk, the wise ones having bulky skirts. So she, her normal dress to her taste wasn't that bulky. She would be the main observer that commented on that.
Sometimes I wonder if it's because they took rectangular pieces and just really pleated them down to the skirts so that they didn't really have a triangle type patterning. They just rectangular.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that for these because it's very easy to divide the skirts if you've just got that simple rectangle to start with. And as I said, the dolls, they're a bit restricting anyway because they're not flexible. So, but they are these dolls, the Tonner dolls, are quite true to human shape though, proportions, which is great. So Barbie is a bit, her waist is too small. She would not fit her insides in her skin. But yeah, absolutely that, whether you can work with a triangle for yourself or a rectangle, or whether you're much better off with gauze is entirely up to you as a maker. I don't know what I do for myself. I probably would have gauze, I think. just for personal taste. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, there's a fair bit of bulk there, but it's not as ridiculously so. But I could have thinned it down just by not having, by tapering the cut of the skirt, definitely.
Nice.
I just kept my look a bit easier.
Now, I'm suddenly trying to remember if Jordan talked about the girls being in some sort of stomacher or bodice corsetry of any sort, and I'm not really recalling that.
No, they didn't. Well, okay, so they don't wear any stays or pair of bodies or bodices or whatever you want to call it. There's the shift, but they never wear a kirtle, so they're not really being held in place. And some of the girls do have quite sizable bosoms, so that's probably not the most comfortable thing for them. He really minimised kind of the underwear. It was really only the shift was ever mentioned, nothing else. But in this period, in all the periods, there was some support for women, be it just your petticoat that was a supportive petticoat, which works great for most women, or if it's firm enough, and then the separate bodices or whatever. There's always something. So that that's just not described. So one can only assume that in his mind, they weren't wearing any. Which, yeah, it's not like the real world. That's true. That's another thing. I mean, I did write a whole, with the fashion article I wrote, there is also a separate underwear one.
Right.
That has all this in it, where I go through that. And yeah, I've searched and searched for references to anything like that. And there is no support, no bras, no stays, no nothing like that I could find.
Well, I know things like the coat hardy that are earlier, they can be cut in such a way that they are supportive just by themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. It could be that, in fact, their bodices were very tight, and that was the support they had. That's not really mentioned either way, so they may well have been kind of like a coat hardy.
Yeah, the closest we get.
Certainly. Yeah.
The closest we get, I think,
certainly
is like Elaine and having to change her wardrobe as the pregnancy went along, which is pretty much something only a queen could afford to do.
Yes. So she just got new clothes. Normally, that you're right, that they would leave have a front closing dress, they would leave sort of lace looser, and you could sort of poke through, so to speak, and covered, if necessary, with a stomacher, as you said. The Kandori that have just the Regency style dresses with the Empire line, well, they're obviously not wearing, any that would not support them at all, because as a supportive bodice to perform the function of a bra. So, I do not know what they did or didn't do. Yeah, it's there. So that one is particularly interesting, and you sort of wonder, okay, did he actually think that bit through? The other people that
not.
No, I don't think so. That wasn't a big thing. He actually went to a lot of trouble with the fashion anyway, compared to most authors, male or female, which is, in a way does bring that world to life hugely, in my opinion. Even if I found myself not always agreeing with some of the styles, it's still, most of them were very good indeed, very well, interestingly described. Yeah. I did wonder with the Kyrian and the royalty that have the striped panel down their sack gowns, or whatever they probably were, whether that could have been like a stomacher, or as an insert, but was it separate or was it sewn in, for instance?
That would be nice, because it seems
Yeah,
like that
just-
would be more practical to have it,
Mm.
because I never saw the stripes as like going completely around.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely. No, I never did either. Yes, that's true. I guess because I knew the fashion it referred to, and I knew that the gown came, up to here, and then you had whatever different decoration you wanted there, because well, really it was the petticoat kind of thing showing through the undergown. So I just assumed that it didn't go all the way around, that it actually was just in the front.
yeah, honestly, that the Taglierians are the ones I'm thinking will not get their fashion reflected in the
Probably not.
show, because it's so over the
Yeah,
top.
it was. I think it was his first effort at a costume that was outside the standard, if you like, typical fantasy costume. And so, yeah, I'm not sure that it was to me, it wasn't the best designed one, but it's obviously very distinctive and in that sense interesting. But yeah, it's, I guess it wouldn't be terribly pretty if with the stripes.
Oh, I'm sure somebody could come up with a pretty version.
Probably, yeah. It's just some of the colour. Yes, because they usually preferred dark colours, so you can't sort of do pastels. It was distinctly, they did not like pastels. They were all dark colours. We see in New Spring, the seamstress was trying to go for like pale colours paler than Meringue wanted. And when Swan started to make difficulties at the seamstress's shop, Meringue was dreading the pale dresses that the seamstress was going to make for her as punishment for bringing a difficult client to her. So yeah.
I remember loving that scene so much.
Yes, that's right. It's good, and it's nice to see all the different artisans included, and those who made your clothes were very important actually. So it's quite a big deal. So yeah, it was really nice to see that, and very realistic. And the same when they're in Amador and they're the girls, Marneve and Elaine, meeting and then getting drugged by a seamstress. That was an hilarious scene too. Alarming, but hilarious. Really so very well at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the last major seamstress scene was Matt and being fitted, and then he's like, I gotta have my hat.
Yeah.
She's just like, no.
Yes, because he was going to get something rather more Japanese looking, I suspect. Yeah. Well, at least he never got the indignity of being advised to change his hairstyle, which could have happened, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure that was going to be coming next.
Yeah. And I guess speaking of Matt, we should also speak of the Empress, because she did not wear divided skirts at all. She was in actual, well, like a culotte, and some of them were actually even a little more fitted than that. So you almost like the sort of East Asian style leggings, or Southern and Eastern Asian style leggings, where they're not tight like our exercise leggings, but they were certainly, fairly quite fitted.
Right.
So yes, she was well into trouser territory. So, which well, it's a very practical garment.
Yes, very easy to self-defense.
That's right, and yeah, I mean, the Empress made a point of looking as regal as possible, but still everything was so that she wouldn't die wearing the clothes. They wouldn't restrict her at all. So yeah, She's a very pragmatic woman.
Yes. Yes, with the breakaway clothing and everything else in order to be able to move quickly
Yeah, that's right.
when attacked.
Yeah. In the last 3 books, some of her clothing was perhaps, it's described in a fairly modern style. So I was left uncertain as to whether they were meant to be quite modern or just, that was just the words used. I mean, yeah, so. I've done a few garments of hers, but I haven't done any, I don't think, from the last book. So that's still to happen.
Right.
Like so much else.
Always another idea.
Oh, yes. Well, that's just it. The book is full of things that spark ideas. So it's one of the joys of the series that everyone's found that's read it. Yeah. And it'd be very interesting to see it on the screen too.
Oh.
Whether they sort of go the conventional and, you know, its own unique look. I hope they do. In Game of Thrones, they went to the trouble of creating their own look, and it was, again, one of the features of that series. So it can really, really do something for a series.
Yes. And it's beautiful embroidery pieces that I hope are reflected. You know, I want to see a Rand's coat with a huge dragon embroidery, though that probably won't be until season 2 or 3.
Yeah, well, yes, he takes a while to work up to that. But yeah, indeed. Yeah. His tailor is never mentioned, so he just appears with this coat. Who did it? I'd like to know. So
many unnamed tailors in the book.
Well, that's just it, because you know, gold work to that standard and that degree of elaboration, that's a work of months or weeks at least.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the couching, it doesn't take a long time, but it's still, you know, there's a lot of that, and it's got to be done very precisely, and so on and so on. So it is a matter of weeks to do. Depending on how much you have, it can run into months.
Right.
I've done enough gold work to know, to be quite familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, your pieces are always so impressive.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're coming up to the end of our hour, but this has been fun talking fashion and emphasis on the skirts and everything else. So
it's been lovely talking with you, Deana. Really.
Yes. So glad you can join us from across the world.
Yeah. So your Saturday night, my Sunday morning. Yeah, it's quite a gap.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, I guess on that note, stay safe down there, and hope you have a wonderful winter. And I guess that's it for the night or morning.
Yeah. Yes, and the best to you and everyone at JordanCon.
Okay. Thank you.